in St. Helena of having a corporation come in, purchase a single family home, and turn it into nothing more than a timeshare, and a really expensive one at that. We're a cul-de-sac of 8 homes, and 7 of which have become a local tourist destination with banners and signs all over. But we believe it has been our best defense in keeping potential buyers from coming to look at the home. Our local realtors won't be caught coming down our street. Like St. Helena, Picasso chose to purchase a home on our street, knowing that it was regulated against, in our case, short-term rentals. As we have quickly learned, Picasso does not care. I mean, honestly, not only suing the city of St. Helena, but the mayor, the city manager, the director of planning too, is proof that they are nothing but litigious bullies. We believe that people have had it with the high-tech billionaires regulating our housing prices and availability. There's a domino effect to taking homes off the market at any price point, homes that will never again be full-time family homes. And in the end, when people are unable to purchase a home in their price range, they're long-term renters, and the rental market also becomes impacted and inflated. So getting corporations like Picasso and Zillow out of our neighborhoods is important. It's not just a coincidence that the co-founder of Zillow is also the co-founder of Picasso, just looking for that next billion. So we are with St. Helena. We appreciate it, and we truly appreciate your time for tonight and allowing us to speak. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. We'll look for additional public comment.
Yael, you should be able to unmute yourself and address the council.
Yeah, hello, my name is Yael Bernier, and I'm the current president of the Dry Creek Valley Association in the valley right outside of Healdsburg. And we're definitely opposed to Picasso. They've bought 2 homes in Dry Creek Valley that they're running as a Picasso operation. And the biggest problem for us is that it isn't allowed in a land-intensive agriculture zone. We have strict rules in our general plan, but Picasso doesn't care. However, they have us in a quagmire because of the lawsuit in St. Helena. You know, our supervisors haven't acted yet. However, I feel that they will, because they see it as a real problem in terms of our land-intensive agriculture zoning. Either way, I just want to tell you we're with you, and we'll all join in our alliances to get Picasso out of our towns and ruining our communities. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
There is. Connie, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Yes, good evening. This is Connie Wilson, resident of St. Helena. Just wanted to let you know that residents in Napa and Sonoma counties, Southern California, and even other states have formed community alliances against Picasso's encroachment into their residential neighborhoods. We understand you cannot make public comments pertaining to the Picasso lawsuit. However, please know, as many noted tonight, that many citizens here and in other communities affected by Picasso support your stand in the lawsuit. They currently own 4 houses, at least, in residential areas of St. Helena. All of Picasso's timeshares are located in generational, working-class residential neighborhoods in direct violation of our municipal code. Their vacation properties are next to senior citizens, retirees, local workers, and most concerning, families with young children. These neighbors know and interact with each other in our small communities. Picasso homes are all within walking distance of 3 schools with much foot traffic from young children. With up to 8 different owners of Picasso properties, each unknown to the other, neighbors will never know who is coming and going. Residents care about affordable housing and the dwindling availability of rentals and lower cost homes for themselves and their families. And they care about maintaining the sanctity, vibrancy, and safety of their residential neighborhoods. They do not support Picasso's bullying tactics of circumventing local zoning ordinances to make a profit from selling shares in transient occupancy timeshares. Thank you so much for your continued attention to this important matter. Good evening.
Thank you for the public comment. And I'll look to our city clerk to see if there's any additional public comment.
There is no additional comment.
Very well, thank you. And I'll note there were a number of letters that came in on this as well. We will circle back to this item at the end of the meeting before we go into closed session. So with that, we'll move forward and move into our reports by staff and city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. I'll begin with our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Prior to this meeting, we did have a special meeting closed session to discuss potential initiation of litigation, and there is no reportable action from that closed session. And we will report out from the closed sessions after this meeting at our next regular meeting.
Okay, very well, thank you. And I'll move to our city manager, Mr. Prestwich.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 updates tonight. One, if you've been downtown today, you today have a chance to see the Chamber's art installation. This is at the Hunt Avenue Hub, where the street has been closed, and we have a holiday wine barrel tree. So we understand it's receiving a lot of publicity already, and we invite the community down to see that. It should be spectacular at night. Secondly, happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and city offices and the library will be closed on Thursday and Friday.
Thank you. We'll move to our finance director, Dr. Mitz,
I have nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
and our city clerk, Ms. Shafopoulos.
Nothing to report.
Public Works, Mr. Rincon.
I'm glad to report this evening that I do have a new employee, an assistant public works director. Eric Jansen is his name, and he started on Monday, and he's coming up to speed nice. Thank you.
Great, great to hear. Thank you. And planning and building, Ms. DeRosa.
Good evening. The Hunter EIR comment period will close on November 30th, and we're also having a special meeting at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
On the 30th, is that?
On the 30th, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We'll move to our council members. Councilmember Hall.
No update tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chateau.
I'll just give a quick update on our Climate Action Committee meeting. We had that, both the mayor and I attended, and also Priya Nixon was on there. I'll send an email around to council so they can see we're getting a summary report of what happens at that meeting that we can share through our city clerk. But really high level, we went through the greenhouse gas inventory and optional tasks. And by that, we then all approved, all the jurisdiction agreed to do our part in the funding for that. St. Helena's was $4,042. We also received an informational update on electrical vehicle charging stations. There's a lot of good comments and details in that. And one of the follow-up items will now go through staff as we figure out how do we get more of these in all of our cities. And they talked about grant money and different considerations. I'll share more detail on that. And then we also talked about reports and announcement on future agenda items. And one of the important ones was a letter to the CUPC on net energy metering. And also on budgets, we're going to have a future agenda item where we talk about budgets and how do we expand our staff capacity for our Climate Action Committee work. As we've seen through our own city council, we keep getting more and more requests. So how are we going to have the money and the staff to actually do something about all of these items that are coming to us?
Thank you. Councilmember Hardy.
Nothing to report.
And Vice Mayor Doring.
Thank you. Just briefly, the ATSC met recently and had a presentation regarding the Vine Trail coming through the heart of St. Helena. And as you can imagine, the major routes through the city proposed are through Oak Street or through Church Street. Both raise considerable issues regarding potential loss of parking. There are a number of proposals to mitigate that loss of parking. As I understand it, a similar presentation will be going to the school district in December. And then, as I also understand it, we at the council will be looking at this in some form or fashion, I believe in January. And correct me if I'm wrong, staff. That was the latest I just heard. Other thing is, I wanted to report that I attended a conference virtually on mass shootings of all things and being prepared for that. I did it at the suggestion of a local resident, and as I said, I did it virtually. I did order the protocol manual. It's extremely interesting. It was put on by folks who unfortunately had to suffer through mass shootings throughout the country. It was very well done and excellent information, and the planning and the tabletop exercises and the protocols and all of that information, I hope to share with our staff at some point, because I think as sad as that is to have to think about, that's what we have to think about. So that's it for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll circle back to Councilmember Hall.
Sorry, and I know this is not really an agendized item, but just following up on Vice Mayor Doring's comments regarding the mass shootings. I was thinking myself, it might be good to engage, I don't know if that's here at a public forum or separately, but with both Sheriff Ortiz and Chief Hartley on that issue.
Thank you. And I'd be supportive of that. I don't know if circling with the Vice Mayor in terms of how to perhaps link something like that up may be a good step forward.
Yeah, definitely. I will be asking for some follow-up and follow through, and I can talk to the city manager about that, some ideas on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to echo our city manager in talking about our Hunt Street holiday downtown at the hub, at the Hunt Street hub, a really tremendous structure. The chamber's done a great job putting this together, this large tree of barrels, and it's going to be pretty spectacular. I'm hoping to get down there after the meeting tonight and see what it looks like with some lights on it. I got some photos earlier, and so want to thank the chamber and everybody for helping put that together as we move to the holiday season. That was just nice to start moving forward. I also want to recognize that the St. Helena Saints football team, the varsity football team, is heading to a section championship, which is a significant level. Just reading from the newspaper briefly here, it says on Saturday night, this coming Saturday, an encore St. Helena High School football fans have anticipated since the third game of the season will finally happen when the second-seeded Saints, 10-1, visit top-seeded St. Vincent de Paul, 10-1, at Petaluma High for the North Coast Section Division 7 Championship. So this should be a really significant game. It says, like two freight trains ready to collide, the teams now have a 7 p.m. kickoff at Ellison Field in Petaluma. So hopefully a good contingent can go over and represent St. Helena there. So just great job, Saints, and wanted to recognize that achievement.
Go Saints.
Go Saints. Okay, very good. So with that, we'll move now to our presentations and public recognitions. Seeing none, we'll move through our staff briefing and then move to consent items. And this is where members of the council or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. And what I'll do is I'll just read through the numbers, and if anybody wants to pull from either the council or the community, please raise a hand. So I'll begin with 9.1. We'll go to 9.2, 9.3, and 9.4. So I'm seeing no hands. So with that, I would entertain a motion to pass the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilmember Hall,
Yes.
Ito,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank you. So with that, we'll move to public hearings and we'll open the public hearing. This is item 10.1. This is an appeal filed by George Kalianides to overturn the October 5th, 2021 denial of his applications for demolition permit and design review in order to demolish an existing single-family residence to accommodate the construction of a new single-family home on the property located at 1428 Allen Avenue in the medium-density residential zoning district. The project is exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15301 and section 15303. And this was prepared by Mr. Heacock, our senior planner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I am going to share my screen real quick. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. So as you noted, on October 5th, 2021, the Planning Commission considered a request by the appellant to approve a demolition permit and design review in order to demolish the smaller of the two homes toward the back of the property at 1428 Allen in the medium density residential district in order to construct a new, larger two-story single-family home. And you can see that toward the back here of the property. And you can also see these two red arrows here. This is the proposed home for demolition. And at this hearing, public comments were received from neighbors who had privacy concerns related to the proposed second floor window location on the north elevation, which you can see circled here. Additionally, the commission was divided on whether to allow a small remnant of the front house to remain a non-conforming legal structure being absorbed into the new rear home. And that portion is highlighted yellow here. At the conclusion of the meeting, no action was taken as a motion was made to approve staff's recommendation. However, the motion did not receive a second, and Commissioner Anderson had recused herself due to a conflict of interest, so we only had 4 commissioners voting at that time. And this failure to act by the Planning Commission resulted in a de facto denial of the project. On October 18th, 2021, the appellants filed an appeal of the Planning Commission's no action. Attached to Exhibit 3 to the staff report is a letter from the appellant setting forth the basis for requesting that the City Council overturn the denial. In summary, they contend that the addition is subject, the addition will be conforming in its entirety, and the existing building to which this addition is attached is legal non-conforming in its entirety. The resulting structure is a single building. Neither St. Helena's past practice of approvals have, nor its code does specify what is permitted to use the conforming space and who may use its non-conforming areas. Consistent with the provisions of the code, the entire project does not increase the existing degree of nonconformity. That they were asked to decrease the degree of nonconformity, which they believe is an unreasonable request. That their proposed window serves as a fire escape, which the other 2 bedroom windows facing east cannot comply with the mandated 44-inch sill height due to the marginal slope of the roof below. And that eliminating this window involves expensive plan change in the roof configuration below and several other portions of the plan, and a more expensive lower pitched roof. That they believe it is inappropriate for the city to favor one property owner over another and restrict their use in a one-sided manner when the other property owner has other available options and refuses to make a similar concession, especially when said window is fully compliant with the provisions of the code. That in denying staff's recommendation for approval of this project, the Planning Commission gave no reason for doing so, nor did it specify any section of the existing code that the project violated. They believe that the denial was arbitrary and hereby petition the City Council to overturn it. And again, there are 2 primary issues related to the application, whether the existing non-conforming portion of the front house, which you see yellow here, which is proposed to become an ADU, can be absorbed into the new home toward the rear of the property. And all new construction with this is conforming. And secondly, the privacy concerns from neighbors about the second story window on the north elevation. And it should be noted that while the code does not prohibit second story windows, the design review criteria noted in the Planning Commission staff report does give the council the ability to consider its compatibility with the site and its surrounding environment. Adding a condition of approval requiring that the window be opaque or frosted can be considered by the council to address privacy concerns from the neighbors. So the City Council has 2 actions to take. One, determine that the project is exempt from requirements of CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15301 and 15303, and either approve a resolution granting the appeal, thereby approving the demolition permit and design review for the proposed demolition and new construction, or approve a resolution denying the appeal based on specific findings, thereby denying the demolition permit and design review for the proposed demolition and new construction. Option 2B would require the council making specific denial findings and directing staff to bring forward a resolution of denial on a future consent calendar. And there is one additional slide I wanted to share with the council this evening, and this shows two scenarios where this existing remnant piece would be allowed to remain without question. That would be as if this remained an ADU and then they built a new single family home detached toward the rear of the property, again, in compliance with any applicable development standards. Or another version of this would be leaving this a non-conforming portion of a single family home, doing a conforming addition to the single family home, and just building a detached ADU toward the rear of the property. That concludes my presentation. I do know that the applicant and their representatives are here and are anxious to address the council, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have now or when the time is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heacock. I just would like to get a little clarification from the city attorney and city manager in terms, and I should have checked earlier in on this just to refresh myself. Does the appellant have a 15-minute window and then there's a response time if there's opposition?
That's a good question, Mayor. I don't know if you have specific rules on that. In general, I think that most jurisdictions give the appellant some additional time beyond what others have and an opportunity to respond to any comments. But I don't know
Okay.
what specific time limits are. I don't know if Cindy knows off the top of her head or Maya, but that is traditionally the process where they have some additional time at the beginning beyond the allotted 4 minutes, and then an opportunity to respond to comments afterwards.
Cindy, do you have any insight here?
You are correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so very well. So what we'll do, I am seeing the appellant. Is there anybody that is going to speak in opposition here? Do we have putting a hand up? I'm seeing none. City clerk? Okay.
No hands are raised.
Okay, very well. So what we'll do then is we'll open this to the appellant to make a presentation, and we'll give that 15-minute window. It may not need that whole window, but we'll give the window, and then we will move into our discussion. Mr. Kalyanides, are you?
Yes, I do.
Very good.
Thank you. I designed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kalyanides, if I may interrupt just briefly. Are there any initial questions from council to Mr. Heacock on this issue? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Kalyanides. Please proceed.
So, well, I designed this addition in steady and close consultation with staff, which recommended approval. The Planning Commission never articulated the grounds on which it denied this application. So frankly, I don't really know why I'm here. What you have in front of you is a fully conforming addition to an existing legal non-conforming structure. Neither I nor staff nor the Planning Commission identified a section of the code which prohibits a conforming addition to use any portion of an existing legal non-conforming structure. I may point out that the city is full of examples of uses between legal non-conforming structures and their conforming additions. I believe that an objective of the code is to preserve the visual heritage and character of the city. We did so when we restored the front building, which received a San Helena Beautification Award in 2012. And I believe we are doing this again with this project by replacing the derelict structure in the rear. A second issue by the Planning Commission concerns a second-story fire escape window, which due to structural constraints, and I may go into that if you so wish, which faces the Ellis property to the north. Ellis petitions the city to prohibit it, claiming loss of privacy inside their living room. In order to eliminate this window, please consider that changing the design of the rear section of the addition is far more costly and time-consuming, both in terms of design, in terms of construction costs, than the variety of available options to the Ellises to secure their own privacy. In addition, anybody purchasing real property, at least this is what I do, ought to exercise due diligence and consider the impact of fully code-compliant future adjoining development on their property, as this window clearly is. Nevertheless, as a considerate neighbor, I visited the Ellises, and as I outlined in my written statement, I offered to redesign the rear portion of the addition at my expense. The drawing is on file, but only if it can be approved ministerial. I don't want to go through the Planning Commission again and start the whole process all over again. In addition, I asked Ellis to agree to a deed which has a reciprocal restriction to all higher than ground windows facing each other's property. I'm willing to do that. Ellis has refused to restrict his property in the same manner he wants the city to restrict ours. I'm aware that the city does not engage in private agreements between neighbors, but if it rules in Ellis' favor to eliminate this window, in my view, it will exercise clear favoritism, favoring one property over another. This is all I have to say. Can answer any questions. And if there are none, I'd like to pass it on to our attorney, Mr. Rose.
Thank you. I'll look for initial council questions. And I am seeing none, so we'll pass it back to you, Mr. Kalianides.
This is Jim Rose. I represent the property owners, George Kalianides and Christine Tittle. In reviewing the entire city file on this application, hang on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what we're appealing here. The Planning Commission basically by default denied the project, but yet the project itself, nobody has raised an issue as to its legality or illegality. We have some legal non-conforming uses. My understanding is that there was an issue with the neighbor involving some privacy issues. That's not grounds to deny this project. If you choose to live in town, you're going to be giving up some privacy rights, including future development from your neighbors. St. Helena has been a developing town now for at least 20 years. I've been here for 30. You're going to be subject to future development, legal development, which means second-story homes, expanded building sites. And if you allow somebody to come in and have veto power by simply saying this is going to affect my privacy, that's not recognized by your code. You cannot give somebody veto power by their subjective disagreement with the project. There's no recognized criterion in the ordinances that allow somebody to do that. Otherwise, the city is going to be arbitrarily denying projects or approving projects depending on who's asking that it be approved or denied. And that simply just should not be part of what St. Helena should be enforcing. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. So we'll bring it back now. Mr. Kalianides, is there anything you'd like to add before we bring this back to council for deliberation?
I just mentioned that Mr. Ellis has several options to preserve his privacy. One of them would be to install a opaque film on the upper section of their clear story window. The other one would be to plant a couple of oleanders, which are fast growing. I don't see why I have to not have this window when a neighbor has several options to secure their privacy. If they didn't, we might be having an issue here, mostly an ethical one. But in this case, I just don't see it.
Thank you. So I'll bring it back to council. I have a question for Mr. Heacock and Ms. DeRosa. Was there any indication from the Planning Commission why this did not move?
There was just no consensus between the planning commissioners.
I see. Are there any initial comments from council here where we are? I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. Well, this is just a request for clarification from Mr. Heacock. Am I correct, Mr. Heacock, in understanding that the commission did not find a motion that was seconded for action? In other words, am I correct in understanding that because of their inability to even second a motion, there was simply no action taken?
You are correct.
Thank you.
Would anybody like to start with some thoughts here from our council?
Well, I'd like to get a little clarification about, we can do better on our appeals in terms of the preparation here, with all due respect. But basically, what is our authority, council, in terms of our review oversight? Do we have de novo review? And then could you also talk about the application of design review at the council level? Those two questions would be important for me to know about.
You have de novo review of the entire application. So the finding, the demolition permit, the finding of the non-conforming use, and then the design review. So you can you review those without deference to the planning commission's decision, which was essentially they took no action, and so there was a need for an appeal.
Thank you.
Council, any comment here?
I guess I'm struggling with the remnant, and maybe the applicant can explain that. Maybe from either an architectural point of view, from a practical point of view, from a monetary point of view, what is the importance of leaving the remnant to join the new house? Just practically, you know, I'm just struggling with that, Mr. Kalanides.
I didn't quite get the question.
I'm trying to understand, either from an architectural point of view or from a practical point of view or from a monetary point of view, whatever it is, why is it important to leave the remnant piece and have it joined to the new building in the back?
It's just the choice we made. I don't think there is anything preventing us from doing so. When one designs something, there are several options. The main consideration from it leaves more cohesive open space. If we were to separate the two buildings, which we don't have to do, we just end up with little chopped outdoor spaces. And this is really the primary reason.
And I appreciate that. So the main intent is to try to join the both buildings together. Is that the intent?
Well, this is what accomplishes the objective of maximizing a cohesive outdoor space.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. I really don't have any concerns with the retention of the non-conforming area. I think the staff report is very clear that that is allowed by our code, and indication to me is that in that regard, this application is consistent with past practice. I think the more important question is in terms of what is not easily decided from my personal viewpoint. The more important question has to do with the window that was a subject of concern at the Planning Commission. And I think window treatment that provides some privacy for the neighbors is a pretty simple and straightforward approach to leaving the window in place, but addressing the neighbor's concern at the same time. I engaged in some dialogue with our planning director this afternoon, and Mr. Heacock was part of that as well, so that I had a clear understanding of the heights, the distances involved, and based on that exchange of measurements, I believe that some treatment of the lower half of the window, it doesn't matter to me particularly how it's done. It can be done, I think, with a coating on the glass. There may be other ways, but a window treatment to for the lower half of the window, something to an elevation of 60 inches above the floor would be an appropriate resolution of that concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional council comment?
I just would like to say that because I ask questions doesn't mean I'm taking a position on the remnant. I ask questions because I think they're important to me. They may not be important to Mr. Hardy, but I do agree that the window is an issue with me. I was just trying to elicit some information as to why it was important to leave the remnant, and I've got that answer. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau.
Yeah, I'm leaning on agreeing with Councilmember Hardy. The same thought I had about that lower half of the window, because I am also thinking, you know, there is a right to have the second story in this place and have a beautiful view. So this is, you know, I'm seeing if this is something that you would be open to doing to respect the privacy, just seeing the concern, and you could still see the beautiful sky from the top half of the window. Because it is such a tricky thing to know, particularly how much privacy will be lost looking out from that window. So I would like to ask what the applicant thinks about that.
Well, my feeling is that as a principle, if you're asking me to put an opaque film over the lower half of the window, this is an option also available to the neighbor. So the question is, why should I do it and not the neighbor? Since my window is fully code compliant. So I regard this as a favoritism, and I don't think this is appropriate.
So then my question just goes back to staff, because it said in there that we have, there is something in there about having it be an option about the opaque. So how was that determination made?
How was the determination made that
That was an option that we had as a council.
Yeah, so in the required design review criteria, criteria number 2 is, and these are the findings for design review, compatibility of the design with the immediate environment of the site. Number 3 is relationship of the design to the site. So these do give, in this case, the council discretion, under that matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional council comments? So I'm going to look to our city clerk to see if there's any public comment on this matter.
There is. Nancy, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Good evening, council and everybody else. I find this, I would say amusing, except that it's too serious to be amusing, but it's mind-boggling to me that this window should be such a grievous issue. Are you aware of the monstrous remodels that have happened all over town and new constructions, one being a multifamily unit on Pope Street that practically obscures all daylight for the house right next door? I mean, there's projects all over that not only invade people's privacy. Meanwhile, we've got Picasso, and privacy means, I don't know, this is to me really weird that one neighbor cannot like a window because what, George is going to be peering at them out the window from the second story? I don't know. You guys have it in your power tonight to just approve his design and let him move on. And there's no code violations whatsoever. This just comes down to something that frankly is like silly. I can't believe that it's even up for debate that he should be being held up on this project over a window that is code on a project that meets code, that's going to enhance the whole neighborhood and beautify it actually, and bring the city more tax dollars. Give the guy his project, for crying out loud. The neighbor that's got an issue, he's got all kinds, he or she can take measures to secure their privacy if they're really that concerned about it. It seems very petty to me, frankly. I hope you guys do the right thing on this. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. Is there additional public comment?
There is none.
Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. The discussion about the everything meeting code, this is, I'm certainly leaning towards approval of the appeal. I do the point that Mr. Hardy makes about or Councilmember Hardy makes about the window treatment, and I understand Mr. Kalyanides' argument too, that if the neighboring side is not agreeable to adopt the same for their own. I do understand, and I don't want to get into personal areas. There may be a bereavement issue the opposition that, so there may be that may be why there's a lack of comment at this point. So it seems if it's coming down to the window and the window treatment, that seems to me the issue, unless there is more discussion on the non-conforming aspect. And is there any comment on that? If we're just talking about the window. So seeing none of that comment, so seeing just we're talking about the window, and my thought here is, and I don't know if Mr. Heacock can tell me, is there an ability for some outreach to the neighbor in terms of on their side doing the privacy approach with perhaps some kind of tree or shrubbery, so that if we move forward tonight, we still engage with the neighbor to help them see some options for their property? Mr. Heacock, is that appropriate?
I mean, that would be between the neighboring property owners. We can't, and I would defer to Ethan on this, but we can't encumber the neighboring property through this entitlement application.
That's correct. If you would like to know, Mayor, I mean, we could ask them to outreach, but we can't obligate the mayor or the neighboring property owner to do anything. They're not before us this evening.
Okay, I'm just wondering if we move forward, if we can do with some sensitivity to saying we're recognizing perhaps an aspect of it, but I do tend to I do tend to think that Mr. Kalianidis's point about if the neighbor is not willing to do the same, that perhaps we could just move, and I'd like to hear Councilmember Hardy's thoughts on this, if he would. And also Councilmember Chateau, where you are now on this in terms of a window treatment. Councilmember Hardy?
Yes, well, I'm thinking about this, with some consideration of how concerns about second stories and loss of privacy have been a recurring theme. And it's one with which I've struggled for many years. And I really have to remind myself that my own expectations of privacy around my home are shaped to a significant degree by my background growing up in San Francisco in a neighborhood where there was a 6-inch space between neighboring residences. So that's a very different setting. But where I come out is this, frankly, is that I think where homes are side by side, it's unrealistic to impractical and undesirable to allow windows to become an issue. But I do understand the significance of views that overlook a backyard, a swimming pool, etc. I think that is a very real concern for neighbors of developing property. And I think where there's a simple and easy way to respect that concern that doesn't have a significant impact on the applicant, that's appropriate to consider and is consistent with the rather broad design review guidelines that we have at present. I'm also very much aware that we're at the beginning of an era in which changing state law is really pushing towards higher densities. These concerns will occur in situations like this one where the city has some discretion. They have been already and will continue to be raised in situations where we do not have any discretion, most obviously with respect to ADUs, but I'm sure it will come up in other settings as well. So the challenge for us, in my opinion, is to strike a reasonable balance. The proposal I've made, I think, is that here. And that's just my opinion. I'm certainly willing to consider other viewpoints on this, but that's my thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional council comments? I'm seeing Councilmember Hall, and then I'll go back to the appellant.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Hardy. I agree. I think the broader context is a move in general towards higher density, and that all of us have to get used to higher densities. I think the other issue in my mind is If the applicant has designed something that meets all of our code, then why are we second guessing it? He's done everything he is required to do. So if we want to apply arbitrary modifications to our code with every project that comes through our planning commission, we need to go back and revisit our code and either button it up so it's tighter, so we have language that helps applicants know on the front end how to navigate this process. I mean, it's the worst thing in the world to have to go to a planning commission whose decisions are arbitrary, and that's how it feels. And certainly arbitrary, and then no support for the decision in the end. So that's just how I view it. I'm not saying that these neighbors are going to be comfortable living side by side for the next few years. I mean, I handle my neighbors in many different ways. If I don't want my neighbor looking over, I just won't wear a shirt one day and walk around, and suddenly they're not looking my way anymore. So, there's lots of ways to handle things. And I think our challenge as a city is to provide a process that is smooth, that's understandable, that applicants have confidence in, and that they can navigate and move quickly. So I'm for accepting this project as it is.
Thank you. Any additional council comment? My thought is and I agree, but I do want to recognize Councilmember Hardy's thoughts on this, that we're moving in this new era. And so moving forward with this project as presented, but with the idea that we as a council or a planning commission look at what that code may look like in the future, so that we're not applying things arbitrarily. But if we want to look at something like the necessity for a window treatment, that it's part of a code and is part of a process that is at the beginning, front end of the project. That is where I am. And I'll look to our city attorney in terms of moving this forward. Are we looking for a motion that specifically approves the appeal on both counts?
Yeah. So I think the two options on the table are that I'm hearing from folks would be someone making a motion to approve the appeal in its current form, so with no changes, and the second being with to approve the appeal with an added condition to install some sort of window treatment in the lower half of the window that is at issue. So I think those are the two options that the council's been discussing. So someone could make a motion for one of those and we could proceed with that.
Okay, I'll look to the council and if there's any other comment, or I'll entertain a motion. I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. Well, just one last comment. The response of the Planning Commission, which unfortunately led to no decision and thus no findings, nevertheless is, I think, to some significant degree consistent with decisions that have been made in the past in terms of a pattern, if you will, of an effort to find ways to address neighbor and neighborhood concerns when they come up in the design review setting. So if we are to respond in this case as suggested by, as suggested by the mayor and council member Hall, then we're making a break, I would say, with past practice. I don't have any strong objection to a change. To be honest, have never been a fan of our rather broad and vague design review standards. I have long found them entirely problematic. But it has always been my view that, you know, it certainly was my view for the years I was on the Planning Commission, that we have a responsibility to apply the rules that we have, not the ones that we wish we had. That said, if we think our design reviews at council, if we think those design review standards should be applied differently than they have been, and that a project that complies with all objective standards should be approved, sort of regardless of what the subjective response to the design is. I just want to be sure that everyone's prepared to live with that, because that is a change, and it will come back to us in the form of future appeals. And again, I'm fine with that. I just want to be sure that everyone recognizes that it is a change and that it will have consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional council input here?
Does the staff have the ability to call up any of the photos that are attached to the staff report? In particular on page 129 of the staff report? I'm looking at just the view from the neighboring property down into the neighboring home. Their window seems to be very high up, and it's looking, I guess, into their great room. Do we have the ability to show that?
Give me one moment here. I'm seeing.
It's not as easily modifiable as Mr. Kalianidis' window, but I just think that's an interesting perspective. From their perspective, they don't look into anybody's windows. I mean, there's nothing to look at on Mr. Kalianidis' side, but it is looking down in basically their whole house. And that bothers me a little bit when it's such a relatively simple solution to avoid that one small issue.
You're thinking the window treatment being the small issue?
Yes. There's a photo of the Ellis property looking into their, I guess it's a living room or something like that from up above.
Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Can you make it bigger? And I guess is that the Ellis backyard?
Correct. I cannot make it bigger for some reason.
Okay, can you scroll it down a little bit so I can see it better? Okay, thank you. Or up a little bit, I should say.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't see what you're seeing.
Okay, I want to see more of the window.
There we go. Yeah, I believe you're there.
Okay, that's good. So that's the view basically from the Kalianidis property. That to me is, I don't know if it's equal in terms of both sides saying, well, you could do this and you could do that. And that window is really high, kind of hard to do anything with that window. Anyway, I continue to be concerned somewhat about the privacy issue, but I do understand the concerns raised by council and Mr. Kalianidis. So it's a tough call.
Councilmember Chateau?
Is it confirmed that this is from the window that we're talking about, this view?
No, because the window doesn't exist yet. So this is kind of a hypothetical.
This is what a window would do. Oh, I see. From Mr. Kalianidis' side. Gotcha.
No.
No, this is a hypothetical of what it would be if somebody was looking from the Cal Unitas side to the Ellis side.
Yeah, my concern is we don't know exactly where this was taken. I don't know. I didn't see anything that gives me, like, I just don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, I'm speculating to a certain degree that it's taken from either equally or from slightly above, but anyway.
The neighbor would also then have the ability to do a treatment on their side if they had concerns. And the fact that they were not willing to also commit to a treatment, I wonder if that brings us to a certain place in the council here.
You guys do you want me to leave this up or take it down?
Aaron, how did we get the top picture? What is that from?
The neighbors submitted that. This is from the Planning Commission staff report.
Okay.
The Ellises say we are unable to put curtains on this window because it is high on the wall and it is a hopper style window that opens inward for ventilation.
So, and I'll go back to Mr. Kalianitis briefly, just to see if there's any movement or willingness. And I do grasp your point very clearly. But is there any willingness on your side to consider a treatment on the window?
Well, again, and first of all, this picture that you see here, I don't know how it was taken because eye level from the hypothetical window of the addition is 17 feet off the ground. This picture is not taken from 17 feet high. I don't know how it was taken to be representative of the issue. But I'm also concerned, listening to the comments by Mr. Hardy and Mr. Hall, we have a situation here where we are contemplating two similar solutions. One made by the Ellises, the next property owner, and one by myself. If you put the burden on me, are you creating sort of a implied code that privacy, the preservation of privacy on a neighboring property falls always on the person who does the addition and not on the person who is already, and not on the neighbor? May I point out that we have a window on the other side of our building, which is just as far away as the neighbor on the south side. And that neighbor has not registered a complaint. Imagine if that neighbor registered a similar complaint. Would it be upon me to not have any windows just like that without the code mandating that? And I'm not an attorney. Maybe Mr. Rose can weigh in on that. Why place, according to what logic or what principle is the burden placed on me when there are options, specifically on the Ellis side, to preserve their own privacy?
Now, this is Jim Rose, and I am very concerned about that point, because once you start arbitrarily imposing these conditions for denial or qualification on these projects, you guys are setting precedent. And the next time we go in on one of these projects and the same issue is raised, and I'm representing the owner who's screaming for privacy, and you go, well, we've got the project meets code, we're going to approve it. And I'm going to say, well, what about the Cal Unitas project? Now all of a sudden we have arbitrary, capricious I'm very concerned about that. If you're going to have clear codes to be enforced for development, then make clear codes to be enforceable. Any person who comes into the town of St. Helena to be developed should have a clear path, foreseeable. If I meet the criteria of the city building codes, I'm going to be approved, not subject to some vague, ambiguous standard, which is actually illegal. You can't have this kind of system of approval of projects. If you meet code, it has to be approved. If you don't meet code, fine, but you can't come up with this nebulous smokescreen of, well, we've done this in the past. No. We don't live in the past right now. We live right here and now. I'm very concerned about this because when you have arbitrary decisions being made based upon who's asking, who's got the political connections, I'm very concerned about that because you're going to have inconsistent results, foreseeably inconsistent results.
Thank you for the comment, and I'll look to Councilmember Chateau. I do, and then I have a comment.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say, I saw it too as a simple solution that could work, and it's sounding like it's not working. I'm comfortable just moving forward. It did point out in the letters that some other neighbor did, was concerned about all 7 windows. So when we're talking, I don't want to get into the place of saying what needs to happen with all these windows. So I, at this point, am comfortable moving forward, approving this project. Or I don't know the exact language. I'll go back to the staff report. I'll see where my colleagues are.
Thank you. And we can see where folks are. I tend to think that if we stick to the code and then decide that we want to address an issue by looking at our code and putting something in there, and as Mr. Rose said, something that's not arbitrary, perhaps that's a way to deal with it in the future. But here, it is aligning with code, and that's where I'm leaning as well. And I'll look to Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make one point, and that is that, we're not talking about denying the project based on the windows. We're talking about imposing a reasonable condition. Not to say that you have to, ultimately it's going to be your decision what you want to do, but we do have the authority to impose a reasonable condition to, to address concerns that the council may have in the design of the project. And the nature of design review standards is that, there's not that we would deny based on design review standards, but that we would come up with conditions that would, kind of mitigate potential impacts that the project may have on its surroundings. And so that was the basis for the discussion of the treatments on the windows. I wouldn't say it's arbitrary to come up with a solution to an expressed concern. I wouldn't say you have to either, and then, there's good arguments on both sides. And so I just didn't want you to leave here with the impression that you didn't have any discretion as to how you act tonight.
Thank you for those comments. And I've seen Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. Well, again, I'm not at all averse to taking a narrow view of how we apply the design review standards that we have, but pivoting, as has been proposed here from past practice, does have the inevitable effect of setting our planning commission and our staff to some extent a bit adrift. So I don't know that there's anything we can do about that tonight, but we're going to have to be prepared in some manner to give some direction that will enable our commission and applicants to understand how our design review standards are being applied. Thank you.
And Councilmember Chateau.
Yeah, Councilmember Hardy, can you talk a little bit more about that? I just value your work in the past as the chair of the Planning Commission. So are you saying that in the past, the Planning Commission takes in neighbors' complaints for the design of the project and then finds something reasonable to make changes?
Well, reasonableness is another challenging term to apply. I think what I can say, and I'm going to respond to your question, but also suggest that you may want to hear from our planning director as well. Has been my experience serving on the Planning Commission, and has been my observation for a decade, if not more, before I served on the Planning Commission, that in looking at the compatibility of the design with its surroundings and the compatibility of the design with the neighborhood, that the commission has exercised the discretion that we have been advised this evening comes with those design review standards to take neighbor concerns into account. This does lead inevitably to inconsistent results in that projects where there is no neighbor opposition may look very similar to projects where there is, and there are different results. It seems to me there was a project where the appeal of the applicant was unsuccessful in a situation in which the neighborhood consisted of almost entirely single family residences, and the project was for a 2-story residence. So what we're talking about is a change. If what we really mean is that we don't think design reviews should extend to incorporating neighbor concerns into a code compliant aspect of a structure, that is a change. And I'm not sure that for me personally, it wouldn't be a welcome change, but we're making it not through a change in the code, not through some resolution of policy. We're making it in something more like a common law manner, if you will, where we've got a particular decision by the city council, and back at the Planning Commission, people are going to watch the video and try to figure out what it means for what they can or can't do. And design review standards remain the same, and the level of discretion remains the same. So we're going to potentially create more uncertainty, at least in the near term, rather than less. And that's something I think we should all be thinking about, regardless of where we come out on the particulars of this appeal. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to look to the vice mayor here to see if you can see a path to navigate forward here in terms of a potential motion.
Well, I'd be looking for a motion. I'm not as concerned as Mr. Hardy is about the uncertainty. I think at some point we need to look back at the design review criteria and beef them up a little bit, particularly the one that we're talking about, the compatibility element of that design review criteria. It's always been vague. It's going to continue to be vague. The question as we move forward, when we're undergoing our zoning code amendment, is whether we want to beef that up. It is vague here, and that's why we have such a subjective approach. I'm willing to have someone entertain a motion. We'll go from here. I thought that Councilmember Chateau was ready to make one, but I don't know.
Is there a motion? I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Yes, I'll make a motion that we, well, I don't have the staff report in front of me. The share screen I saw flash briefly was actually helpful. Thank you. I move that we determine that the project is exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15301 and section 15303, and that we approve a resolution granting the appeal, thereby approving the demolition permit and design review for the proposed demolition and new construction on the property located at 1420, 1428 Allen Avenue.
Second.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. And roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank everybody for the deliberation on this. And well, it was mentioned that somebody said that this is a small issue. Issues need to be discussed and deliberated, and it's an important exercise for our council to work through issues of all different sizes. And I just appreciate the deliberation and focus. I'm looking to our planning director, Ms. DeRosa.
Yes, thank you. I did hear some concern about the design review findings and the fact that they are arbitrary. And I did want to reassure the council, our subcommittee knows this, but that has actually been a very big focus, particularly of mine, after the last appeal we had on Stockton that, said, hey, we don't want second stories. And so we have to be very clear to articulate for future applicants what the expectations are, what's allowed. And with our new objective standards, I think that will very much streamline the process and make it a lot less appeals, a lot less subjectivity. So I just wanted to add that to the end note of this item.
Thank you.
The council will be very appreciative of that.
Thank you. And as the vice mayor was mentioning in terms of looking at this in particular, this area. So thank you for that clarification, Ms. DeRosa. And I'm looking at our city clerk.
I just wanted to confirm that you did close the public hearing.
And I am closing the public hearing. And we will then say thank you to everybody for participating. And we will move on to our next item, which is 11.1, and that's our staff briefing, city council discussion and direction regarding the recommended plan of finance for CIP 5-52 WWTP upgrade project. That's our wastewater treatment plant. And this is prepared by Dr. Mitz, our administrative services director and finance director.
Great, thank you very much. And I will be sharing my screen. I put together a brief presentation on this particular item, and a lot of the information is in the council report, so I won't go into too much detail as I'm going through the slides. So can everyone see my PowerPoint okay?
Yes.
Give a thumbs up, nod. Okay, perfect, thank you. So again, it is a staff briefing on the recommended plan of finance for the wastewater treatment plant project. To my right screen. So just a quick overview, the CIP bids did come in on September 16th. We did release an RFP, the city did. On November 4th at 4 p.m., we did have our bid opening. And as you can see, these are the bids that we did receive in order of the lowest dollar amount to the highest dollar amount. So they went from just under 15 million up to just almost 18 million. The apparent low bidder after the opening of the bids was Thompson Builders out of Novato for $14 million. I wish it was 14,000. $14,888,590. And that is for construction costs only. The initial engineering estimates were at $11,485,500. So there is a difference of about $3.4 million where we were actually over what the initial engineering estimates were for this project. The CIP S52 revised budget. So you'll see on the left-hand side, you have what was budgeted, and some of it has already been spent too in previous years leading up to this point. So we have our design, environmental, legal, construction management, construction contract, and contingencies. So I really want you to look and focus at the bottom two numbers here that we have for the construction contract and the contingency. So while the engineering estimates were a little over $11 million, the city did put in for the construction contract and the adopted CIP budget, the $12.5 million that you can see here. So you'll see where the shortfall is. It's just shy of $2.4 million in the construction contract. And then contingency, obviously, we accounted for 10% contingency. And so that does show the contingency does have a shortfall of $304,000 and some change based on what the bid document came in from the builders. So you see the total shortfall is approximately 2.6, almost $2.7 million. So the funding gap that we are solving for is approximately $2.7 million. Once the bid opening happened, the city immediately started working with the city's municipal finance advisor, bond counsel, as well as the placement agent who we've been working with to work on the interim financing for us. The current funding that we have right now did also anticipate a loan from the Traffic Impact Fee Fund of just short of $900,000. And currently that fund does have an estimated fund balance of $1.94 million. Funding gap options that we did consider that we worked through with staff, the city manager, as well as our municipal finance advisor, is we did look at use of wastewater operations fund balance. An increase in the interfund loan from the Traffic Impact Fee Fund, which we're already planning on utilizing. And also another option would be use of general fund reserves, and that could be either in a loan or a cash contribution. Where we were leaning towards after a lot of talk among staff members as well as the city's municipal finance advisor is using the wastewater operations fund balance. So our adopted fund balance policy right now is 6 to 8 months cash or 50 to 67% of the cash. Based on the fiscal year 22 adopted budget and also looking at the estimated year-end balances, that represents approximately $1.5 to $2 million of cash on hand having in the wastewater funds. Currently, our estimated fund balance at 6/30/2022. Again, this takes into consideration. I just want to say estimated because that is using our fiscal year 21 unaudited numbers, as well as what we think we're going to spend in the current fiscal year. We are looking at having a cash fund balance of approximately $4.1 million in that account. I mean, this does include a little over $1 million that were in settlement funds that we are planning on utilizing for the wastewater treatment plant project. Removing that $1 million we already have accounted for, it does leave an estimated available fund balance of almost $3.1 million or 102%. So that is well above the target of 50 to 67%. After discussion with the city's municipal finance advisor, he did agree that he recommended that maintaining a minimum fund balance of 3 months cash or 25% is acceptable. And also based on his recommendation, he did recommend utilizing cash balance prior to doing an interfund loan. So based on all of that information, staff is making the following recommendations in this respective order: is to first utilize wastewater fund balance, which would be approximately $2.3 million, but also knowing that we would maintain at a minimum 25% or 3 months cash. And it is important to note that in the fund balance policy, that the council adopted policy, council does have the discretion to bring it below the 6 to 8 months because that is the target and not the absolutely necessary on it. So I just did want to point that out. And then the second respective order would be use of the interfund loan from the Traffic Impact Fee Fund of approximately $900,000. And then very last would be use of general fund reserves if we needed to go there. It is important to note that the respective order that we would utilize the fund balances, that is also anticipating that we use the full 10% contingency, that there wasn't any other cost that could potentially be be lowered on the project. So this is the worst case scenario for what we're looking at right now. So again, just as a quick summary, so here we have what our adopted budget is. We have our 15.966, that is total budget cost. That also includes stuff costs that we've already incurred in previous years. The budget is going to increase to $18.6 million, and the staff's recommendation to fill the funding gap would be use of the wastewater operations fund balance, taking it no less than 25%. So I will be happy to answer any questions that the City Council has. The item before you tonight is just discussion and direction, because what we are looking at doing is at the next council meeting, we will bring the interim financing agreement back in front of the City Council, as well as the acceptance of the bid. And so we want to make sure that we have City Council support in our recommendation before we move forward with those items.
Thank you. Is it possible to put that last slide back up?
There you go.
Thank you. Any initial council comments or input at this point? I'm seeing Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Dr. Metz. Quick question. Where did we get the original construction contract number in our adopted budget? Where did that come from? Was that our city engineer?
Yes, that would have come from the Public Works Department. And then the initial engineering estimates would have been through, I believe it was Hydroscience, but I will defer to Mark Rincon for those.
Okay, and what I'm trying to get at is that seemed to be, so what was different between that and our low bid? Were there one or two line items, in other words, in that cost that are $2.5 million more today than they were a year or two ago, or?
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, excuse me. It's basically the cost of construction is going on everywhere. All components, all materials, concrete, steel, everything is going up. And this is just reflective of that nature that's happening right now, US wide.
Okay, that's what I was, I shouldn't say hoping for, but that's what I was wondering and assuming. But if the cost of materials are up, then they are. So in other words, our scope in those two numbers is essentially the same.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Sorry, I just have one other comment, Dr. Metz. The third bullet of the funding plan references tapping into the general fund if necessary. I'm wondering if you did say that you're going to come back at some point here with interim fund financing. Maybe we could do the same thing before we start tapping the general fund. We put some parameters around how much that is. Is there some range that we should build in there? Or perhaps there's a request for you to come back at that point in time where you believe that you're going to need money from the general fund, and we understand the scope of it then.
Under the current bids that we have, if we do include the full 10% contingency, we don't anticipate we would have to go to the general fund, but that was just an option we wanted to let you know that we considered. How we have it laid out right now, it would be utilizing the cash fund balance of the wastewater operations fund at no less than 25%, and then it would be the interfund, and then the third would be general fund. The only thing that could affect us is that for some reason, in order to maintain the 25% reserves in the wastewater fund, if there was something catastrophic that happened, that we had an emergency repair or our revenues didn't come in as we anticipated. So that's why we put that as a line item.
And I would add to that just briefly that it's really out there as an alternative to the significant use of fund balance on the fund, on the wastewater fund. So if the council felt uncomfortable taking it down to 25%, then this is another alternative for the council. But we do see that as just a backup option.
Thank you. I'm seeing Vice Mayor Doring.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Mitz, could you just talk a little bit about the traffic impact fee fund? It probably would have been a stronger report if we kind of delineated what that's for. My concern is, are there any projects that will be delayed or sacrificed? I'm not even sure we've contemplated any, but I'm curious, are there any that may be delayed or sacrificed if we use those funds for this project, say over the next, I think it's a 5-year term that you're suggesting? I just want to get a better sense of the impact on the impact fund.
Yeah, as of right now, there are no projects that are scheduled to utilize impact the traffic mitigation funds, and so that is why that was particular fund was the one that we looked at. Plus, that it does have a fairly high balance in it. But as of right now, there's nothing in the 5-year CIP that would actually be utilizing those funds.
What is the balance?
It's approximately 1.9 million. And then it's important to note that if there are any projects that come up right now, we're limited to what projects we can utilize the traffic impact fee funds that are part of the current impact fee study, since we have not adopted the new study. And even with that, if the total project costs, only a certain percentage of the impact fee funds can be used to fund that project. And so it is very limited on what can be utilized.
Understood. Thank you.
So is there any additional council comment? I've got a few thoughts here. I'm seeing none at the moment, and then I'll open it for public comment in a moment. If we agree that this is the right sort of priority in how we're using our funds, and we look at a little more specificity regarding some of the numbers, and you were to come back with a little bit more of a breakdown, but we, in today's meeting, give direction that we concur with this order. Is that what you're looking for?
I just need what I need tonight is just consensus that what's laid out in front of you for the revised budget for the funding recommendation, that it is endorsed by City Council, because for us to be able to continue and secure our interim financing, we do need to make sure that we have a solid plan in place so they know that we are committed to be able to fund the whole project.
Okay, and I'm going to go to the Vice Mayor, then public comment.
Yeah, thank you. I should have asked this earlier. Maybe I missed it. I thought there was some discussion or potential for value engineering. Have we gone through that exercise, and what were the results of that exercise to see if there are parts of the project that could be delayed or eliminated, or that? Not that I'm favoring that. I would just want to know whether we went through that exercise.
We did highlight some items that could possibly be delayed. I got some pushback from the operators, of course, and it wasn't anywhere near what the additional costs were. So we're kind of holding off on that. We will value engineer it with the contractor to see if there's any cost savings. But essentially, we identified very little. And so we were working with the contractor once they're on board and the construction manager to see where cost savings can be had.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll look now to public comment. And I think we can take the slide down unless there's anybody else that needs it. Looking to public comment here.
There's none.
There's none. We'll bring it back to the council. First of all, I just want to say thank you very, very much for the continuing effort on this project. It's critical, and to see it moving forward is really tremendous. It's a health and safety issue. It's a water security issue. It's something that I think we're all going to be very, very proud of as this moves forward. So you're looking for direction, and I believe if we look to the council, do we concur on this? I'm looking to Councilmember Chateau, then Councilmember Hardy.
I do agree with the recommendations as they're laid out, knowing that the general fund reserves are only in, if necessary, the backup plan.
Thank you. Councilmember Hardy.
Yes, I'm in support of the primary recommendation from staff to use wastewater fund balance of approximately 2.3 million to maintain cash reserve at 25% or 3 months. with the interfund loan from traffic mitigation fee as the second source, and if necessary, in general fund reserves as the last resort.
Thank you for laying that out clearly. So I'll look to the council. I'm seeing Vice Mayor Doring.
Sorry, one more question on the wastewater fund. How are we in terms of collections on the wastewater fund? Are we in a problematic situation right now where if those monies don't come in, because of COVID, pandemic, loss of jobs, all of those issues, are we going to be in a difficult spot if the anticipated budget revenues don't come in as projected?
Yes, it is something we're definitely concerned about, knowing that when we do our quarterly reports, we are showing the aging status of both the utility funds together. So it is a concern. There is a concern when it comes to the reduction of water use, because for our non-residential customers, what we're charged for wastewater use is based off of how many water units. So we have seen a little bit of a decrease in there. So it is a concern, and it's something we're definitely tracking very closely. And that's why we want to keep the no less than 25% in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I'm supportive of the recommendations with the condition that there's a return to the council before tapping the general fund. Right now it's just an open-ended, we've got the authority to do what we want to do with the general fund. And I think it'd be good for a project like this to, if there's a check-in point, so we can contain it if needed.
That
would be it. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm certainly supportive of that check-in point. So it looks like we've got consensus here on the council. I'll just look to the Vice Mayor. Are you comfortable?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So, and then I'll look to Councilmember Hardy.
Yes, just before getting any deeper here, since we've been meeting since 5, I would like to request a break before we go on to complete the agenda.
Okay, very good. So we'll finish this item, and it's 7:47, and we'll come back at 8 o'clock and finish up. So thank you very much. Okay, folks are coming back in here. We'll wait till the clock ticks to 8 and then we'll get rolling here again. Okay, we're at 8 o'clock. We've got folks back and we will resume our meeting. I'm seeing all our council, I'm seeing our city manager and our city attorney. So we're ready to go, our city clerk. So we're ready to go. This is going to be item 11.2. This is discussion, consideration, and direction of the following requests by Our Town St. Helena, OTSH, regarding the property at 963 Pope Street. The city to the city to extend the current acquisition loan, $450,000 at 0% interest for up to 12 months from the current maturity date, extending the maturity date to December 9th, 2022, potential adoption of a resolution. And 2, effective immediately, the city's Affordable Housing Trust funds 751 and 752 will cover the RCAC loan interest payments, approximately $1,900 per month, while OTSH pursues other financing. This would amount to approximately $22,800 to cover interest-only payments from October 2021 to October 2022, when the RCAC loan comes due. And 3, the city to provide a $250,000 0% interest loan to OTSH to either A, repay a portion of the RCAC loan, which has a current loan balance of $543,889, thereby reducing monthly interest payments and debt on the property, or B, to serve as permanent financing to make the project more competitive for the upcoming HOME funding application. And this is by Dr. Mitz, our Administrative Services Director.
Thank you very much. So a little bit of background on this item, and we do have representatives from Our Town St. Helena that are here tonight that can answer some questions if the council has any. So on August 27, 2019, the City Council did authorize a 24-month, $450,000 0% interest loan from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to Our Town St. Helena to assist with the acquisition of a property located at 963 Pope Street. The purchase of the property was for a total of $850,000, with the remaining balance of the purchase price and the initial pre-development expenses financed with an interest-only loan in the amount of the $543,889 from the Rural Community Assistance Corp, or RCAC. At the time that the loans were made, Our Town St. Helena did assume that it would have construction and permanent financing in place for the project, and that the loans could be repaid within the 2-year term limit. Both the city loan and the RCAC loan did have 2-year terms. The city's initially expired on September 10th, 2021, and then RCAC's loan expired on October 1st, 2021. On August 24th, 2021, the City Council did adopt a resolution which provided Our Town St. Helena with a 90-day extension for the loan term. And this extension did allow Our Town St. Helena and the city to look at different loan options for City Council consideration, and that's what's being brought before you tonight. And similar, in the same vein, RCAC did extend its loan term to October 1st, 2022. It has always been Our Town St. Helena's intention to secure the construction and permanent financing to repay the 2 loans. However, Our Town St. Helena does report that securing financing for the project has been more challenging than anticipated. So because of the challenges to secure the funding, Our Town St. Helena did bring forth the following asks of the city, and those were the asks that the mayor did read out for us. And I do want to pay attention to the very first item, because there is a resolution attached, and City Council does want to provide direction to at least extend the loan term out for 1 year. So based on that information, I will turn it over to the city council because we are seeking direction on the various requests made by our town, St. Helena.
Thank you. And I will open it initially to the council for some comments and questions. And then I believe there's some representatives from our town, St. Helena, who could hopefully give us a little more background as well. So am I seeing any questions or input from council at this point? I'm seeing Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. The staff report indicates that the current construction is, current development cost is $3.7 million. What was it originally?
I will defer to our town, St. Helena offhand. I don't know those numbers. I don't know those numbers offhand, so I will defer to our town, St. Helena on that. And I believe Erica Scalar, no, it looks like Jennifer is on the, oh no, Erica Scalar is there. Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Can you repeat that question real quick? I was in the middle of getting on with you.
Sure. The staff report indicates that the current estimate for total development cost is $3.7 million. What was it originally at the time, the first known?
Yeah, it was 2.7 last year. And when we just updated our construction numbers, it added $1 million. But I would also say we updated our numbers. I forget exactly how many months ago it was. It's really at the height of the increase in construction costs. So we're hoping that that is going to start coming down again.
Okay, and the difference is simply the cost of materials?
Yeah, labor and materials. Our contractor, and so not only did we get it from our contractor, but we're also in touch with other contractors as well. Because as you can imagine, this is a big concern for us, and they're saying that this is industry wide. It is partly due to the supply chain problem, because there are materials that just cannot arrive, that we don't have locally. And so then having to switch to different kinds of materials, having to bake in possible delays, because the contractors we're talking to have ongoing construction projects right now that have holds on them because materials aren't arriving. So baking that into their numbers, and then also, of course, labor shortages, and therefore the increased costs of bringing people in from other markets or paying more here. But I mean, I can get into more detail.
No, I'm just curious if the scope of the work is the same.
The scope of the work is the same. Yeah.
So it's an apples to apples scope. You're saying your challenge is getting materials here. The cost of materials is up, and of course, labor's hard to come by.
Right. So we are really hoping that as the supply chain starts to even out and things are released, and in fact, just a week ago, I was on a call with a contractor for another project, and they were saying that they had already started to see some prices lowering on lumber. So our fingers are crossed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments, questions at this point? Thank you for being on, Ms. Sklar. Is there any additional background that you can give us on where we are with this? I appreciate the sort of restructuring of this question coming back to us. We appreciate it. Are there any comments at this point?
I would just say that the big picture here is that we need to go out and get our public financing And as you know, our town, St. Helena, was able to acquire the property next door. So that's going to be able to shift some costs between the two properties, make some efficiencies there. So it's going to be a more viable total number of units. We're thinking maybe around 10 total, 5 here, 5 next door. And so there's already some generous donors who have stepped up. And there will be a capital campaign. So we will be involving the entire community in raising money. But right now, our big push is to get the public financing that we can acquire. We're hoping to be able to apply for home again this year through the city as we did last year. We will be more competitive this year because we do have our planning commission approvals. And last year we didn't get points for that. That's also why we're asking for some funds to be committed as long-term, or, in the report it's called permanent, but it's really long-term funding, because that gives us more points at for these competitive funding sources. And we're really hoping to have a strong showing, not only for the home funds, but some of the other funding opportunities that are coming our way in the next 6 months. So I'm hoping that gives you a little bit of a context for why we're coming forward with that request for permanent financing.
Your plans are done, you're firm on 10 units?
Well, so we have 5 units approved, the 1 existing cottage and the 4 units on the property, this property that we're bringing forward to you. The second property has not been approved for any design. No design has been done yet. They just did the acquisition. There's 1 existing, or it's a duplex that's existing on it. So I'm throwing out there that the possibility of 5, but I don't want to say that that's definite because the planning commission hasn't had a chance to take a look at it yet.
Your intent is 10 units in the end. That's my question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And if moving to that larger total of 10 certainly makes us more attractive, and always looking to we're going to have to get units, and so seeing that the project build in that way is encouraging, and also helping you get on the footing, so that we also do want to encourage that, looking for funding and financing wherever else you can, and if we can be helpful in putting you in a better footing for that. Are there any other council comments or questions before I open it to public comment? I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau and then Councilmember Hardy.
I raised my hand too fast. You can have public comment first. But although I will say, just in general, I am supportive of this because I understand it's what it costs to do these projects. And it's particularly difficult in our small communities. We can't do the larger projects. We don't have the land yet identified for that, where that's what makes it so that we're not as competitive for this grant money. Erica can speak to that more. But so when I look at this, I just see, of course, I wish it didn't cost us so much, but it just does. And we need more housing in our community. And this is a way to move forward.
Thank you. And I'll go to Councilmember Hardy before I open public comment.
Thank you. I was just quickly working my way back to the staff report from the August 13, 2019 City Council meeting. And there I see the total project cost estimated at $2,706 and $490 at yielding a cost per unit of $541,298. So that was the information that was presented at the time the council approved the loan.
Can you say the total one more time? Did you mean to say 2,700,000?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. With that, then I will open public comment. And look to
There
our
is no
city.
public comment.
No public comment. Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. I'm inclined to follow the direction here, the recommended action. And could a little more explanation on the resolution?
Yes. So the resolution, the most time-sensitive item in front of the council tonight was the extension of the initial loan of the $450,000 because it is due and payable. It was due and payable on, let me get my dates right, September 10th, but then in August, the City Council did do a 90-day extension on it. So that's the most time critical thing, and that's why the resolution was attached if City Council did want to determine to extend that loan out one more year. If City Council did not want to extend the loan out 1 year, then it would actually become due and payable right now. So that's the most time sensitive. The other items that our town, St. Helena, did make the request for tonight is that the second item is that the effective immediately, having the city's affordable housing trust funds cover the RCAC loan interest payments, which is approximately $1,900 per month. And this would amount to approximately just shy of $23,000. And again, that would cover only the interest only payments from October 2021 to October 2022 when that loan actually comes due. And then the third request, and it's definitely for council consideration and direction to staff on it, because if either 2 and or 3 were done or some combination of them, we would bring back an official resolution on it. And obviously for paying the interest payments, we could backdate the resolution. And then the third request from our town, St. Helena, was to provide a $250,000 0% interest loan to our town, St. Helena, to either one, repay a portion of the RCAC loan that's outstanding, or to serve as a permanent financing to make the project more competitive. So that would be in addition to the $450,000 that we currently have outstanding.
Thank you. I'm seeing Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Just one quick question. Was the RCAC loan interest only? That is. Thank you.
I will
Yes.
defer to Erica. I believe it is interest only according to
Okay.
what we've been provided.
Correct.
It looks like it would be if our current balance is the same as what it was 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other comment or question from council? I would entertain a motion if we're at that point. Councilmember Hardy.
Well, I do have some bigger picture comments that I think are appropriate at this time. I'm very much concerned about what this increase in construction costs means for the city's ability to develop affordable housing moving forward. We have a finite amount of money in our housing fund and a revenue stream for it of some kind, but absent the opportunity to receive some deeper analysis from staff of what this kind of unit cost means for us moving forward, I'm very much concerned that we may need to really focus our strategy for affordable housing on larger projects where we have the opportunity for economies of scale. And I shared this thought or these thoughts with Ms. Sklar earlier today, and her response, which made sense to me, and I think was perfectly appropriate, was that the small project approach that our town, St. Helena, has been taking for several years now was directly responsive to community and council direction at an earlier time. I'm not sure, in fact, I'll back up here. I'm pretty well certain that is not going to work for us moving forward for 2 reasons. One is the increase in costs, and second is the rather dramatic change in our arena numbers. So I think we should be, and I am personally, fully committed to supporting this project. I don't think this is, I don't think it makes any sense to pull the rug out from under our town, St. Helena, at this point in time. But I think, we do need to have the bigger picture in mind moving forward. And I think that should be a subject for a more intensive discussion at a future meeting, and with as much insight into our current housing fund and revenue streams, et cetera. So the question I see for us tonight is beyond the question whether or not we approve the resolution in front of us, what direction are we going to give staff with respect to the second and third requests? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comment? I'm saying Councilmember Hall and then Vice Mayor Doring.
Thank you. Just following on Councilmember Hardy's comments, I too am in favor of larger projects in general. I've shared that with our town, St. Helena. In fact, a couple of years ago, before we even had our arena crunch that we're facing, my thought at that time was that it's just as difficult for our town, St. Helena, to do a 6-unit project as it is a 60-unit project. It's a lot of work to do these things. So, and that was basically the extent of my comment at the time, was feeling bad that they were putting so much work into so few numbers. So if we can find the dirt and figure out how to achieve our arena, I think larger projects definitely will be the way forward. Commensurate with that, of course, is, as we've seen through, I don't know, 3 or 4 years of different types of crisis and evacuations, and now evacuation planning and testing, we definitely might need to consider other routes out of town if we're going to be adding 200 to 300 more households in town. We don't have money to necessarily run out and build another bridge across the river, but we ought to start thinking about it pretty seriously, because we're going to have to meet our housing demands, and we're going to need more routes out of town. Personally, I love our old bridges. If there's a way to preserve them, I think fantastic. But I don't know. I look at Pope Street in particular and think, we've got a lot of folks there and 2 little tiny bridges on each end on a turn, and we had to look at that.
Thank you.
Well,
Yes,
those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Certainly having the necessary arteries for safe transit is critical. And I'm looking at the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I wholeheartedly agree with the concerns raised by Councilmember Hardy, as well as Councilmember Hall on the other issues in terms of access and egress in cases of emergency. So we're looking at a $3.7 million total development cost for 4 apartments. That is shocking, but that's what it is. And that's shocking. That really is like stunning to me. So it prompts me to think, at what point in time will our town have a better feel for the other project and be able to sort of do maybe one pro forma for both projects, so that we can get a better sense of whether those costs can come down? Is there a potential to combine the 2 projects? And I know this may sort of be a thorn in terms of going out for the grants, making it too complicated. I would want to have at least some condition or agreement or something that you would be able to come back maybe in a few months to bring some more information back to see what the combined cost would be per unit. and to see how that goes before we start making even firm commitments in terms of the permanency of the financing. Is that unreasonable, or is that a reasonable approach to take somewhere down the road where we can sort of get a look at both and consider them one project? I mean, my theory is that the cost should come down with more units. I could be totally wrong. I mean, delay, and I'm not trying to delay it. I'm just trying to say, I'm going to feel more comfortable if I get a better sense of what the numbers really are for both projects. Maybe you can comment on that part of it.
Is this for me?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to answer it a little bit in the middle. So you are correct that there will be cost efficiencies or shouldn't say there will be. There are likely to be cost efficiencies, and we're hopeful to find that as well. There's a few challenges, and that is that this second property is about 2 years behind in the development process. And the other challenge, of course, is that it's still uncertain because we don't have our design and planning approvals. But that delay doesn't necessarily mean that we won't be able to get the efficiencies out of it, even if we were able to, because we would like to design it in such a way that the two properties are creating the efficiencies for each other, even if we can move forward, acquire the funding for the one and get the construction underway. But the other thing I want to point out is that, yes, what we would like to do is go out and get as much public funding from outside of the community, so from the state and the federal, bring it into our community. That's the goal that we always have, is to bring as much money from outside in and to use the city money to leverage that. And then, therefore, if we could ask for and receive the 250,000 as a dedicated permanent source, then once we get all the other financing put together, if there's still a small gap, and I'm expecting that there will be a gap, because 250 is not a lot of money for a local community to contribute compared to, comparing it to other public affordable housing projects that are built in other communities, and how much money other communities contribute in order to leverage, right, the other funding sources. So what we'd like to do is this two-layered approach, where we come to you now and get the seed money that we can use for getting the public funding, and then come back to you with our gap and get the final piece. So I guess that's why I'm trying to thread the needle in the middle there, because I'd like to do both ask for it now and ask for it later.
Okay, Vice Mayor Doring, in terms of a response, does that give you some information?
It was somewhat helpful, thanks.
I'm sorry, it was helpful?
Yes.
Council, additional thoughts or questions about where we are here? I also concur that, the cost for this amount of units is challenging. I do see a value in moving forward and being supportive, but with the idea that one of the things we've talked about is making sure that there's a good partnership with our town, St. Helena, and if working on larger projects, certainly with established builders. And I know that this project is a partnership. Is it Napa Valley Community Housing?
Correct.
So there's some tie-in with experienced groups moving these forward, so that we can keep an eye on it from that perspective. I do think if there is a way to pull these together and that gives us some economy, that's a true benefit, with the idea that we are at a point, I believe the political will is there. I also believe the community will is here to look at larger projects. We know, certainly from my perspective, housing that is affordable, people are seeing it differently now. There's a quality and an attractiveness that's changed over the years. And I think the community is really starting to understand there's a benefit to this rather than it being something that should happen somewhere else. I think we're seeing a real value for it here. This is a place to start. It is challenging with these numbers, but I don't want to slow down. And so if we can get our heads around how to move this forward with the idea that we know other larger projects will come to help us get to those RENA numbers. So are we anywhere on council with a look at a motion? Or is there additional information that we're interested in getting? I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Well, I'm prepared to make a motion. I move that we approve the resolution presented in the staff report. And in the same motion, I'd like to move that we give staff direction to come back to us with a resolution for the second and third requests, but with respect to the long-term, the larger contribution, large long-term financing, it's very important to me that when we come back to visit that we have a detailed view of what these commitments mean for our housing fund and our ability to finance additional projects.
I'll second.
And
Can I ask for a small piece of clarification on the second item that Councilmember Hardy request? Item number 3 is that the city is to provide a $250,000 0% interest loan to our town, St. Helena. So there's 2 options. So it's either to repay a portion of the RCAC loan, or it's to serve as permanent financing to make the project more competitive. So this would be above and beyond the $450,000. And then to go to your second point, Councilmember Hardy, I do have available summary of what both affordable housing trust funds look like. So the balances were in the staff report, but I also have it available tonight as well. And I see City Manager Presswich's hand up as well.
Yes, please, Mr. Presswich.
So one additional point of clarification related to item number 2. At what date would you like us to bring back a reso related to the loan interest payments? Is that effective December 1st or some other date? So just clarification on that question. And then the final element of the direction referring to the larger picture, it would be my recommendation that we include in that conversation the 2 council members associated with our housing goals. So I believe that's Councilmember Hardy and Councilmember Hall, so that we could work with you together on bringing back some bigger picture recommendations and work with you on answering some questions.
I would accept those additional comments.
That all sounds good, but I'm thinking it calls for some modification to the motion, and I'm struggling to catch up a little bit here. I'm fine with the second piece here, the interest-only payments starting, effective December 1. with respect to the third piece, I think we should be doing that in the manner that gives the greatest benefit in terms of points for our town, St. Helena, and their quest for additional funding. And I, my hope was that we could make some progress on educating ourselves in the larger picture before we made that additional commitment. So then, I see that third piece potentially as being deferred until we can meet as a housing committee, get up to speed, and then come back to the council. I'm very conscious of the fact we're in the holiday season, and our opportunities to meet are greatly reduced. With respect to a resolution on the second piece, I would hope that that could be in front of us at our next council meeting. And it's as much a question as anything, are we going to have the opportunity to have the housing committee meet before then in time to pull this together? I mean, I'm willing to commit the time, but there's also staff time involved. So I really need some guidance, I think, from you, Mr. Prestwich, as to how feasible that is.
We have 3 work days before we should be publishing the next agenda, which should be next Tuesday for the 14th. We can publish by title. I think number 2 on this we can take care of, I think, working with Director Mitz. And with respect to number 3, we can try to identify a time to discuss that. And I think perhaps we need to check calendars after the meeting on that to see if we can make it by the 14th.
Why is number 3?
Excuse me. Councilmember Hall, I'm seeing your hand up.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Why is number 3 shown as 2 different options?
I will defer to our town, St. Helena, on this one, because this came right from their request, their proposal.
So I don't want to make it circular. It seemed to us, not knowing exactly what kinds of questions and how each of you as council members would be feeling about the support, we felt that it would be good to give you the option of if you weren't comfortable with the permanent finance, just straight up permanent financing, that perhaps paying down the debt would be comfortable. So our preference is to be able to get as a permanent financing chunk. So I really am hoping that we've made a good case and that you are all feeling comfortable with that and would like to proceed with that second option.
And does that second option, the B option, that gives you some better footing in reaching out for other funding?
Right. And that's the gist. Okay,
so if we looked at it that way, that we were approving that to give that opportunity, but if that does not come through, or so does something, that $250,000 then could be used for another repayment. Is that
right? To lower the acquisition loan that we have with RCAC.
Okay, I'm seeing the Vice Mayor.
Just for the clarification for me, mostly, I may know the answer, but I want to make sure I do. What's your definition of permanent financing?
That's true. Permanent might be a little bit of an error. It's not permanent. It would be a long-term financing. So in other words, typically it matches the regulatory agreement. So I think that the regulatory agreement that we already have with you for the acquisition loan is maybe 55 years, 40 years or 55 years. So I would recommend this to be equivalent amount of time. And then ideally, residual receipt so that it's paid back if there's cash flow on the property. And if there's not cash flow, then it doesn't get paid back. But then after 50 years, then the city has the opportunity to put on a new 50 years of regulatory. So it keeps it affordable in perpetuity because it keeps the city in control.
So theoretically, at some point, it could be converted into some kind of a grant after 55 years. Unless I'm still around, then I would still insist it be a loan, but.
Yes.
Is that your expectation, or is that housing advocates in general? Is that the expectation that really is, in essence, a grant? That's kind of what I'm getting to.
You know, it is, but so now I'm working at Napa Valley Community Housing, which has been around for 40 years. And so there are these properties, one just north of St. Helena here, Vista del Valle, and they have these old loans that either the city, one of the cities in the county or the county put on them that are coming due. And they're not a ton. They're maybe like 100,000 or 200,000 because these were made, 30 years ago, but they're coming due. And so what we do is we go back, say, to the county and we say, okay, this is coming due. It's been 30 years. Can we, re-up it for another 30 years? And that instead of we could also pay it off and then the regulation goes away. And then all of a sudden we could rent it out at a higher rent, but that's not what our mission is. So it gives this county or the city the opportunity to continue the regulatory agreements. Whereas and I shouldn't say this because this isn't to our benefit, but to the city's benefit, right? Because if it was converted to a grant, then we would have the opportunity after the regulatory agreement years ended to turn it into a market rate and charge higher rents. So I think it is a decent tool for the city to have for our future generations, because yes, we won't be here, or maybe we won't be here, but for future generations to be able to make that decision to keep those units affordable.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a helpful description of the situation. And I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau.
I'm just going to say I'm in support of moving forward with B because I know that we need a lot of money for this project and this is the best way that we can get that money. And it seems like, I know the big picture number is so big, but this 250 for our contribution seems reasonable to me.
So with that, Councilmember Hardy's motion, where are we with that?
Well, I think I should amend it for clarity's sake to specify that on the third piece, the $250,000, that my motion is that we direct staff to bring back a resolution approving long-term financing in that amount.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Actually, doesn't Anna need to agree to the amendment? She's the one that seconded the first initial motion.
Assuming that Councilmember Hardy amended his original motion with that, then I think it's best that that Councilmember Chateau affirm that she's okay with that.
I affirm I'm okay with it.
And a roll call, please.
Yes, second. Okay. Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Chateau,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. And with that, I'll just make one final comment regarding housing. If we look for opportunities as we do these things to help folks build equity, whether it's through the affordability that somebody can build a nest egg or design programs in terms of working towards ownership, but that helping of others to build equity, it's sharing the really the bounty of what we have here. We've been very fortunate. If we can find ways to help others, be part of that, it's always to me attractive. So just to keep that thought in mind from me, that's an important consideration, and appreciate the efforts as we look at ways to bring affordable or housing that is affordable to our community here for people who live and work here, et cetera. So thank you for this conversation. With that, then, we are now moving to the section of our agenda that is, we're going to pass new business and go to our closed session sections here. And these are items 13.1 and 13.2. We had a bit of public comment on this earlier, but we're going to open public comment again to see if there's any additional comment on these two closed session items. Item 13.1 is the conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, section 54956.9, and that's the name of cases Picasso Incorporated et al. Versus City of St. Helena. Ethan, do I need to read the case number? I'll just read it.
No, you do not.
Oh, okay. And then 13.2 is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, section 54956.9, name of case, Hall Vineland LLC et al. Versus City of St. Helena et al., Napa County Superior Court. And so we'll see if there's any public comment. I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau's hand.
Yes, I will recuse myself from 13.2 because of my husband working at Hall, so I have a financial interest through that. I don't know how this is going to work, so I also want to ask, are we getting off of this and going back to the earlier Zoom link from the earlier special closed meeting, that same link? Okay, and then are we coming back here and then I sign off, or I will just say now I will sign off after item 13.1?
You should just say that we aren't coming back in between.
Okay.
So you've just acknowledged that you're stepping out after the first item.
Okay, I will leave the Zoom after 13.1.
Okay, very good. And so we're seeing no public comment on these items. And so with that, we'll move to the closed session and appreciate everybody's input to this point. I'll look to the city attorney in terms of process. Is that our next step?
Yes, that is our next one.
Thank you, everybody.